Welcome to Secret Story. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I found myself sitting alone again on the front steps to our house. My wife Julie is asleep in our bed. It has been over a year since I found out that she was cheating on me with one of her coworkers. I am 46 and Julie is 44. She is a stunning woman at 5 feet 6 inches. She has thick, long brown hair, long legs. We have been married for 25 years, and we have 2 daughters that have moved out. The oldest is married with a 2-year-old beautiful boy. The youngest is shacking up with her psych professor. Both of them know that their mother cheated on me. The oldest is still mad at Julie, and she calls me every evening to comfort me. The youngest has a no big deal attitude and acts like nothing has happened. I still love Julie, but I don't feel like I am in love with her anymore. Because of her, something inside me is irreparably broken. The guy Julie cheated with was only 26. They had an affair for 9 months before one of her friends informed me she was someone else. I spent 2 weeks in jail for beating the shit out of him. When I caught him and my wife, in my bed, I will admit that our life was stale, and we only had about once a month. I was going to divorce Julie, but she cried and pleaded with me to stay and work on our marriage, so here I am again on the steps, and not being able to sleep. Our neighbor Lori pulls up in her driveway. She gets out to get her 5-year-old boy out of the car seat. He is deep asleep, and she is struggling to get him unbuckled. I walk over and unbuckle the strap and pick him up. I carry him to the front porch as Lori opens the front door and lets us in. She leads me to his bedroom, and I gently lay him down. Lori thanks me as I walk back to the spot on my porch steps. Lori comes out a few minutes later, as she forgot her purse in the car. She stands about 5 feet 10 inches and possesses long, straight red hair, making her a beautiful sight. She sees me sitting on the steps and comes over to sit next to me. "Mac, you are a tall, handsome man. Your wife doesn't deserve you." Lori comments, "At 6 feet 8 inches tall, I have always been a magnet for women. I just feel so betrayed. How is this marriage going to work? I don't even feel like a man anymore," I answer. Lori and I start meeting regularly on my steps. Sometimes we sit in her kitchen and drink coffee. These meetups always occur after midnight. We quickly become good friends. Lori tells me she hasn't for over a year, man or woman. That surprises me. As time goes on, we start getting more risque with each other. Our conversations sometimes turn to discussions about our past experiences and likes and dislikes. At 26 years old, Lori has tons more experience than I do. I basically have my wife and 3 young ladies before her. Lori grabs my face and says, "I find you extremely attractive, and I have wanted you since the day I met you. I tried to resist my urges out of respect for your marriage. Now it doesn't appear that your marriage is salvageable, so let's go." Lori falls to her knees. I am in heaven. For about an hour. I wake up at 7:15 in the morning. Lori has already waken up and is not in the bedroom. She has gotten her son ready for school and is watching him stand at the bus stop from the kitchen window. She smiles and stares at the window as she increases her pace. I glance over and see Julie at the window, crying but not looking away. I turn my head back towards Lori. We both glance back at the window and watch Julie with her skirt above her hips. She is fortunate that tall hedges conceal her from the street. I walk back to my house to find Julie sitting at the kitchen table. We have a long talk. Julie and I divorced, and she got the house. Lori and I live in her house next door. We had a beautiful wedding in the backyard, with my 2 daughters as bridesmaids. I adopted Lori's son, and we had a daughter of our own a year later. Lori and I continue to have tremendous almost every day, with the sunlight or streetlight shining through. Occasionally we notice our neighbor, Julie, herself in the bushes. As she watches us. Julie's stud left her about a month after our divorce. Julie and Lori have become friends. We started inviting Julie into our occasionally when we noticed her at our window. Lori is the love of my life, and I am finally happy in marriage. Welcome to Secret Story, relieved, bewildered, excited and horny all at once, I picked my way through the flailing bodies on the dance floor wondering how exactly we would get away with it. Again, she had texted. And she would get it again, no doubt about that. The only question was how, and, more pressingly, where. She was looking directly at me as I walked towards her, sitting with her legs crossed in the center of a low couch. She looked in control and serene, not at all like the nervous, unsure woman of a few hours before. Flanking her, and talking animatedly across her, were her husband, Greg, and her daughter, Jennifer. Greg looked a little red in the face from drink. Jennifer's body language suggested some irritation. My guess was that Greg was giving one of his semi-drunken and boorish rants on the subject, perhaps, of immigration, or tax, or golf. And Jennifer was attempting to reason with him, or calm him. This was a regular occurrence between them and rarely ended well. Janet, meanwhile, sat perfectly still, watching me. Ignoring them completely, lost in her own thoughts, perhaps remembering our encounter of a few hours earlier, perhaps fantasizing about what our next might bring, probably a bit of both. Greg, meanwhile, did not realize or care how his wife was, or how much she needed to be told that she was. I was near them now and could hear the conversation. Greg, sure enough, was holding forth on a pet subject, speed cameras. Barely looking up as I handed them their drinks, Greg and Jennifer continued their discussion, which was rapidly escalating into an argument. Janet and I looked each other in the eye for a moment, our gaze conveying equal quantities of annoyance at the conversation, amusement with its sheer ridiculousness, and our desire to be away from them. Unobserved by the others, I gave a tiny shrug. I was silently telling her, I want you to, I need you to, but how can we do this? I was hoping she had a plan in her mind already. The disco following the wedding reception had been going for a good couple of hours by now, and the dance floor was starting to empty. Most people had either exhausted themselves with overenthusiastic dancing, succumbed to drink and sunk into a couch, or paired off for intimate chats in dark corners. The DJ had worked his way through his repertoire of recent chart hits, disco classics, and a few 60s numbers to keep the older ones happy. "Ooh, I love this song," said Janet suddenly, breaking unapologetically across the ongoing speed camera discussion. A pause. "Do you?" All three of us replied incredulously at once. "Yes, I do," she replied, defiantly. "Takes all sorts," I teased. "I suppose someone has to." "Well now, Stephen, that's not very nice. I think to make up for it, you should come and dance with me." Jennifer and Greg laughed. To them this looked like our typical in-law bickering. To us, it was clearly flirting. The excitement of getting close to her again certainly outweighed the embarrassment of slow dancing to a Phil Collins song. "Oh come on, you know I can't dance." Janet pouted girlishly, knowing fine well she would have her way. Greg roared his encouragement while swigging his whiskey. "Yes, go on Stephen, old son. Give her a whirl around the floor." Ignoring him, Janet wheedled, "Oh Steve, come on please. These two are boring me silly with their fighting." "Don't worry, I'll take good care of you." She slid forward to the edge of the couch. She held her hand out towards me. "Go on Steve, she'll never let you off the hook now. You may as well get it over with," sighed Jennifer, looking exasperated with both of her parents. "Oh come on then," I replied, taking Janet's hand softly, attempting to sound unwilling. She pulled on my hand and stood, much taller than usual in the towering high heels she'd borrowed from my wife earlier that afternoon. Jennifer had changed into more sensible footwear, believing that it would be impossible to dance in the ones Janet now wore. "Well, I'll soon find out if your mum is better in heels than you are," I smiled at my wife over my shoulder as I walked to the dance floor, hand in hand with Janet. Pushing my luck, no doubt, but I couldn't resist it. "That was very naughty," Janet whispered at me as we faced each other to dance. "I know," I winked. She pouted. "Oh but Steve, I need you. It felt so good. Come on, please. We don't have to take long. We could just go upstairs now, and be quick." It sounded risky, but the desperation in her voice me on. My mind raced, trying to find a safer solution. I lowered my mouth to her ear and whispered quietly. Okay. We'll use your room. Do you have the key card? She nodded excitedly. Good. We'll finish our dance, make sure they're still talking, then I'll walk to the bar. You go upstairs and wait for me. I'll follow you in 2 minutes as long as they don't come looking for us. Okay. Another nod that we were barely dancing now, I suddenly realized. I spoke to her quietly, keeping my face neutral. As if talking about the weather. Janet? Yes. Is your for me? She nodded silently. Say it then. I like hearing you say it. She raised an eyebrow, not replying immediately. Her eyes glinted with excitement, and she nodded her agreement just as the song came to an end and the DJ segued into a Celine Dion song. Now was the moment. I glanced back over to where Jennifer and Greg had been, my heart sank as I realized they were no longer there. Where the hell did they go? I hissed at Janet. It looked like our plan had come unstuck at the last minute. Oh, don't worry so much. Look, she said, nodding happily towards the window behind me that I turned and looked, then broke into a smile too. The two of them had gone outside and were sitting on the balcony, still deep in conversation, where they had been joined by Greg's brother, Peter. Like Greg, Peter was a renowned and inveterate gasbag. Once they started, God only knew when they would stop. At this point I would normally be looking for an excuse to escape their puerile waffling with Jennifer, but this was perfect. Thank you for the dance, Steve. See you soon. Janet pecked me chastely on the cheek, interrupting my thoughts, and before I knew it she was walking across the dance floor towards the hotel reception. I wanted to follow right behind her, but I knew I would have to wait so as not to attract attention. And I realized sheepishly, if I was to walk through the busy bar it would be prudent not to do. Thankfully my trousers and shirt made it a little less obvious than it could have been, but I thought I'd better have a sit down and try to calm myself a little. I shuffled back to the couch for a moment, hoping that I wouldn't be spotted by Jennifer and dragged outside. Screw it, I was going to go for it. Walk quickly and confidently, and nobody will notice a thing, I told myself that I stood, with racing heart, forcing myself not to look over to where the others sat in case one of them caught my eye and called me over. Skirting around the dance floor to the bar area, I mimed a ridiculous act along the lines of I'm just choosing a drink. Oh wait, I've forgotten my wallet, I'd better go and get it, for the benefit of anybody watching. Then I strode to the stairs at the back of the bar, excited beyond belief now. I climbed the stairs as quickly as I could, hoping desperately that Janet hadn't lost her nerve and that she would be waiting for me, ready to fulfill her promise of being naughty for me again. That I walked quickly along the corridor to her door and knocked. There was a pause which seemed to stretch on for hours. The silence and emptiness of the corridor seemed suddenly oppressive, my heart was beating out of my chest, my eyes darting from the door to the corridor and back again. What if I was seen? What if somebody walked past or came out of their room just as Janet opened the door? This had been a stupid idea. The risk was too great. What was I thinking? And so now it was me losing my nerve. I bet she had too, she'd probably be back downstairs already, I thought, looking sheepish and apologetic. At last, a click as the door was unlocked from the inside. Slowly, it swung slightly open, although I could not yet see behind it. I pushed it open gently and stepped through. The other reached out to click the lock into place. Now nobody but hotel security would be able to open the door, although we'd certainly have plenty explaining to do as to why we were locked in there together. I broke off suddenly and stepped back half a pace to look at her. As instructed, she whispered, I hoped you might like them. I had to stifle a giggle. That said, I did love her doing things for me. She smiled back, happily. Still loving to receive compliments. There was a slight pause, again she seemed a little unsure, or perhaps she just enjoyed being guided. I was more than happy to direct her. Stand beside the bed, I told her. I said it quite forcefully, almost an order. This wasn't my usual way. She stood by the bed, and turned to face me, awaiting my next request that I shook my head and motioned for her to turn around, which she did without complaint. That I decided to reassert that control. After 1 hour, yes, Janet agreed with a slow sigh, you're right. Let's do that. Will you do that? I nodded. I know just what to do with you. If you will do what I ask. Her eyes sparkled happily. Oh yes. I'm remember. All yours. 10 minutes later, we were downstairs and acting perfectly properly. We needn't have worried. Greg, Peter and Jennifer still hadn't agreed about speed cameras. For me. My secret, all mine.